You're Rex, right?
How did you know my name?
Just now, when we came into contact.
To remember how I got here?
This world is merely a memory. An ancient, half-forgotten memory of what once was.
How can I help?
I will give you half of my life force. As my driver. As the driver of the Aegis. What will you do, Rex?
Then there's only one choice. I'm in. Let's go to Elysium.
Now place your hand on my chest.
Okay, Rex. Got a lot of nerve, you one-eyed monster.
To be fair, I feel the exact same way, Mia. So today in this video, I'm going to be talking about my Xenoblade 2 review video that I've been plotting for a while now. Not to mention, if you're new to my channel, this has been heavily foreshadowed in literally every single video that's been out since my Xenoblade 1 and my future connected video. I've been dying to talk about this for a while, but I haven't fully completed the game until, I believe a month ago, and I'm really glad I do have the chance to do it now. I also do want to address the fact, before we start this video, that I'm not planning on doing gaming playthroughs currently on my channel. I realize that my videos are best when I'm talking about things from hindsight and are not too chaotic. I find the more chaotic stuff too much, so I'll be dialing it down moving forward. I also want to be primarily focusing on more educational stuff moving forward, since I think that is where I excel the best. The summary of why I'm doing this video series is the fact that I have a few friends who are into Xenoblade who've been wanting me to get into this for quite a while. What happened was I started to play with them, but I got very turned off because we're playing remotely through a friend's computer and I was just using keyboard and mouse on par with emulation. That turns me off heavily, so I roasted the game for about a year before I did a full 180 because the whole experience was just dreadful. That's not really how I recommend you play the game. My friends then all dogpiled me to play the game with them. Eventually I caved. They offered to buy me the entire game series. They didn't need to because I felt like spending the money. I didn't regret it, and I still don't regret it because I really hate the fact I ever felt the need to diss this. For some reason, people don't really know who Shulk is outside of Smash Bros. Most people think of him as an unusual British looking dude who, I'm gonna be honest, looks damn good without his shirt. I was in the same boat until all of this had happened. I understand why, but more people do need to talk about this game series. This is Final Fantasy VII level good, and if you don't want to believe me, emulation does exist, but you do need your own computer. Don't do what I did. To clear the air of how this video is actually based, I've only played the entirety of Xenoblade Definitive Edition, Xenoblade 2 obviously, and the Torna DLC for Xenoblade 2, and I believe about one chapter in Xenoblade 3. I'm not planning on touching the older games since there's not much of a point. The newer games do have better life-saving features, things that make the game a lot easier. All of my videos were recorded using a capture card I have built into my desktop. Also, I've been spoiled on the main plot of Xenoblade 3. This does make myself partial because the ending wasn't too much of a surprise, along with certain other elements. Xenoblade Chronicles is super spoiler heavy when it comes to the story because it is a really, really heavy story. Not to mention that certain things will happen that have the ability to throw your mind in the trash bin if I decide to spoil them. For these reasons, I will not be spoiling too much, even in the spoiler section. I will leave certain things out of this video entirely, so don't be offended if I decide to leave something out entirely. I will also put spoilers in the spoiler section of the video to keep things sane. The spoiler section will be clearly labeled and foreshadowed way beforehand, so you don't have to fret. Xenoblade is a Japanese RPG series that contains themes of age, tragedy, and the killings of gods. Whoever made this game is probably an atheist for these reasons. If you haven't watched my Xenoblade 1 video, the first game is literally just a guy with a future predicting sword that gives him superpowers and Cloud Strife levels of insanity in regards to wielding weapons bigger than their own bodies. The game was really good and I did really enjoy it. I thought the story for Xenoblade 1 was slightly better than Xenoblade 2 just because certain things I got spoiled on, and both games being very formulaic. Not to mention the foreshadowing of Xenoblade 1 I felt was better just because it wasn't so formulaic. The game doesn't need to be played after Xenoblade 1 in order for you to enjoy it. You will need to play Xenoblade 1 and this game anyways to start up Xenoblade 3, otherwise you're just going to be left in the dark. You can play this game first, but the ending won't be as interesting in regards to Xenoblade 2. The shock of the ending was pretty good, and I did like it. I completed the Torna DLC right after Chapter 7 ending. The game does come with a DLC if you're willing to spend the money. That is what my friends recommended, and I understand why. I highly recommend you do the same things, especially play the DLC after Chapter 7. It makes the continuity make more sense. I want to get out of the way the most negative thing, in my opinion, about this entire game. The map is atrocious, and I regret that this is even a thing. The map is a Skyrim level style pointer that did work for Skyrim, just not this game. The pointer is not that reliable and gets things wrong all the time in regards to what direction you need to go. This was better handled in Xenoblade Definitive Edition, even though it was far from perfect. I got lost throughout most of my entire Tantal Titan experience because the map got really confusing throughout the entire thing. Most of this game up until the very end got me very confused about a simple freaking arrow. The whole premise of this entire game is that a character named Rex decided to be paid 100k in order to wed himself and to get something he would absolutely regret. Rex is an idiot, and his idiocy was the only reason why he was able to have the courage to do what needed to be done. If he had any idea of how horrible of a situation this was, he wouldn't have done it. And he wouldn't have been able to have completed it because, similar to how CEOs tend to be complete idiots, his ignorance was how he managed to survive. His disconnect gave him the ability to work without fear, essentially. Despite the story being so formulaic, I did enjoy this game a lot more than Xenoblade 1 just because of the mechanics. They added a mechanic so this game is similar to League of Legends, where you need a flick stick motion in times of dire stress. This allows you to get arts charged faster if you're willing to put in the effort. The old game had a mechanic where you sit there and wait in order to charge the arts. This made Xenoblade 1 less interesting because of the overuse of auto-attacking, but both games were good mechanic-wise, just this one was done slightly better. They also introduced type charting to this series that I did really enjoy. Type charting is used on blade combos when attacking enemies. Blades are a new thing that is added to this game that I'll explain more detail later on. For some reason, people didn't like the idea of memorizing it. I did enjoy trying to memorize it, for they are the same reasons why I enjoy Pokemon mechanics and team building in Pokemon. Also, you will need a rare blade of every type to do well in this game. Rare blades being a blade that isn't super common looking. Otherwise, type charting will be too difficult to do since their stats are a little bit higher. than normal blades. The way blade combos work is if you score a full blade combo, which is just 3 normal blade combos, you get a ball orbiting the enemy. The more balls you have, the more damage and EXP you can do to the enemy. In order to do a full combo, you need a full set of balls orbiting the enemy, and the more balls, the better. A blade of that type has to be attached to a party member, so you need at least 1 type of blade per type, which is, I believe, a total of 8 types, and you can have a max of 9 blades attached to your whole party, essentially. Similar to Xenoblade 1, they also have infinity charts for characters, and literally almost everything in this game is correlated to the infinity chart. You have to complete the infinity chart or you'll be required to do it anyways for story progression. You need it very badly, and I've accidentally forgotten this exact fact many times. People really hate on the mechanics of this game, and honestly, I think it's pretty good. It's like Xenoblade 1 but faster paced, unlike what everybody says that I don't fully get. It's the best mechanic so far in Xenoblade. This is coming from the guy who's only played up to a little bit past this point in the story. The game does a really terrible job at explaining the mechanics. I highly recommend, if you play this game, to read up on the combat system online. The tutorial does really suck, and I understand why people complain about the mechanics. They don't understand them, and it's totally relatable. I'd be in the same boat if I didn't have friends to play along with me. And I understand why this game is hated, even though I do think you are factually wrong. The game introduced the idea of blade and drivers. Drivers are people with a genetic aptitude to use core crystals. Core crystals are items that give you the ability to play with blades from the core crystals they originated from. You want to essentially collect all the core crystals. Core crystals can kill you if they're not used by humans who have the genes according to the lore. Otherwise, you'll get anemia from a nosebleed that just simply won't go away. Just be glad the adult version of Ash Ketchum isn't really in this game, for these characters do look super busted and are just fun to collect. My mouth is still watering, man. It's still watering. Blades are tied to their drivers and cannot wander too far from them. They are at their strongest when they are side by side with their drivers. Blades are born from the core crystals the Titans have created. Titans are blades who reach a certain stage in their lifetime. Then there's the Aegises, which have their own rules as blades that I'm gonna be honest, I'm still really confused on. Not to mention the Aegises are just basically the near equivalent of gods of Bladum. Titans are also the same Titans from Xenoblade 1, but different. Xenoblade 2 has Titans that aren't anywhere near as big as the Titans in Xenoblade 1. However, Xenoblade 1 took place entirely on 2 giants. In the game we are reviewing, there's too many to count. There's at least 10 or maybe 20. They are more country-sized versus the continent-sized Titans of Xenoblade 1. There are several main party members. I'm obviously not going to list them all because of reasons related to spoilers, but I'm also going to talk about some of their blades as well, just because it doesn't make a lot of sense to leave them out. Rex is the embodiment of immaturity and kindness, as previously described. If anyone else has done the stuff he had done, they wouldn't have been crazy enough to have gone out of their way to dig that hole straight out of the ground. Pyra is his main blade of the game series. She's a fire element blade who's indirectly responsible for the Aegis's war aftermath. The war sunk a whole continent and killed a ton of people, Everyone is afraid or is actively seeking her out in some shape or form. Nia is a driver who's a Gormati. A Gormati is just a cat person, apparently. They introduced furries, which I do appreciate. That did need to be added. She is overly sassy, has trust issues in people. She lost a lot and is actively seeking to get it back with the help of other people. She's a super witty, interesting character and has the most iconic lines of literally any character in this series. She's very good at one-liners.
What's this? Were you so frightened by our power that you wet yourself, furry ears?
Did I what? You've got a lot of nerve, you one-eyed monster.
Nia's main blade is Dromark. Dromark is a royal white lion water element blade that has problems with people pushing themselves way too hard. He loves using flora to help heal everyone's aching soul. Tora is a Nopon who's a driver, but not exactly. They use artificial blades instead. Artificial blades are robotic blades that don't need a driver to use them. This is also a relevant thing to the series thanks to secrets apparently getting leaked out to other characters. This played a very relevant plot point in the latter part of the series. He is canonically a 13-year-old driver, and you can tell just by how much he loves his blade Poppy. He's also the only Nopon throughout this entire series. I'm gonna be honest, I enjoyed remotely. He isn't my favorite character, but out of all the Nopon, he's good. He didn't sound completely insane, which I guess is good. Keep in mind my expectations of Nopon are pretty damn low. They are literally Nopons for a reason. Poppy is the overly psychotic artificial blade Tora uses. Let's just say Poppy is obviously programmed by a 13-year-old Nopon. Then we have Van Damme, the widely considered coolest character in the series for many reasons. He is a fan favorite. I just wasn't as overly fond of him, unlike other people, for reasons that are kind of spoiler heavy. He appears in the party in Chapter 3. In order for his character to be utilized correctly, you do have to use him throughout the entire Chapter 3 boss fight. If you don't use him throughout the entire Chapter 3 boss fight, when his character gets sent away in Chapter 4, he won't get his best story utilization that will unfold in Chapter 7. You will miss out. His character is insanely cool, and something even cooler will happen to him in Chapter 7 if you do use him more in Chapter 3. There are some other characters and blades I do want to talk about since they are very interesting. Morag is the soldier that does appear throughout the game series. She has lesbian boots that I really want to get stepped in. She's a nutcracker and is one of the Dommy Mommy of the series who's best paired together with her and her blade. Her brother is extremely suspicious Niall with his blade Aegeon. She's a leader of the police inquisitors of Mor Ardain, and she's a problem throughout the entire early game. She becomes more non-existent as an antagonist as the series progresses. There is Adam, who is not talked too much about, but he is the reason a lot of this series did technically unfold. He is the Crown Prince of Torna and died because humans do not live 500 plus years for some very strange, unfortunate reason. He was the reason this whole thing pretty much happened. If he didn't sit there and make this mistake, none of this would have happened. Gramps is a peculiar character that is the Titan the main character Rex used to sleep in. He goes through a metamorphosis for some reason, and it never really gets fully explained to my knowledge. There were certain minor things that never got explained. That was the more obvious one. He turns into a larvae, and this really comes across as them just trying to come up with something to keep the story progressing. Gramps is Rex's dad and is a fatherly figure throughout the entire series. Jin is the ultimate gay antagonist of this entire series that plays a massive part in trying to murder everybody. Jin looks like the embodiment of every single character in Kingdom Hearts combined. He is sinister, dreamy, and just mysterious as all hell. Malos is the main bad guy of this entire series. Not much of a spoiler. He is evil, gay, cold-hearted, and chaotically playful in a way that nobody else enjoys but him. He is one of the Aegises and is technically related to Pyra and Mithra, and is the main cause of all of this, alongside with Adam. Zeke is the freaking comical doofus who is too dumb to do anything for himself. He is a recurring comic that does have plot relevance later on. I appreciated his character, especially more as the story progressed. However, he is just as comical as he's always been throughout the entire Xenoblade 2. There are certain blades I do believe people should know about, since chances are you will encounter them and you will absolutely need to encounter them. Rare blades are just blades with a custom character model, a voice actor that is just not generic. They have cool backstories and tend to be more useful. Common blades are too common and are too generic, but they have relevance later on in the series. Later on in the series, you can't really avoid them. There's a certain part in the game where you will need all the blades you can get, even the common ones, just to proceed, just as a heads up. Then there is Mizuchi. He is a god-like blade that is his own category of blades. I will say he's the most powerful blade out of all the blades in the entire series. I enjoyed getting to know his character. He was very charming, and I really regret not using him as a blade a whole lot. I felt like he was too good. I had to put him aside for many reasons. His backstory and energy made that really hard to make. I didn't really want to do it. It still makes me feel sad about it to this day. Corvin is a blade that comes with the Torna DLC. You probably don't want to use them. There really isn't much of a reason to. It's kind of like casual mode in Xenoblade 1. Just don't think about it. Don't dwell on it too much. His character could just solo the game entirely, with or without you and Mizuchi. Boreas is one of the best healing blades in the game. She's also something you can just get very early on, if you're lucky. She sounds like a hamster with way too much food in their mouths. They are super easy to max out in this game every step of the way, another reason why they're kind of a threat. It's more tedious than anything, but you can buy all the food you need very early on. I'm pretty sure the voice actor for Boreas did play a character in G-Force, but I don't remember the movie, so don't quote me. It's just a solid B movie, not really worth dwelling on. Rare core crystals are the best to grind for finding rare blades similar to Mizuchi, but you can find rare blades with technically any core crystal. Whether this be common or legendary core crystals are easy to farm when you're playing with the help of unique monsters. Similar to Xenoblade 1, there are unique monsters, but they do double where they drop core crystals. There are other blades in this game, just don't look them up, because there is a certain spoiler you do not want to look up. I mean, it may not necessarily change anything. I didn't really care for this, but some people might, I guess. Don't know why, but anyways. Wolfric is another good character in this game who's a blade and does have a really funny heart-to-heart in this game. He is available only if you already own the Torna DLC, I'm pretty sure. I was told this, but on the internet I was finding out otherwise. I don't think you can get him any other way, but don't quote me because I'm not entirely sure if you need Torna or not just to get him. There are other blades as well in this game, just don't look them up because of spoilers. The final boss of the game is level 60, You need to be level 60 when you need to beat him, and this is when you are in the world tree. The final boss is super explicit. I probably shouldn't have to explain this. You will definitely know it when you see it, for this boss is heavily warned, and warned like crazy because it's all over the place, similar to what happened in Xenoblade Definitive Edition. In Chapter 7, there's this final boss fight that takes a really long time to beat. If you're worried you're not doing something right, you are not. It's just meant to take a really long time. Don't get stressed. I had no issues, but I'm sure other people will, since it comes across as you doing something wrong. You're not. It's just a really long fight for some reason. As previously mentioned, this game does have a DLC, and it's called Torna. The DLC is not mandatory, but I do highly recommend it if you're willing to spend the money. I believe I spent about $30 of American money on it. I didn't like the DLC by itself, despite the fact it was originally a standalone game, but in terms of Xenoblade 2, it did add a lot. Otherwise, Poppy will be harder to grind for, because in order for you to grind Poppy, you need to play an arcade cabinet called Tiger Tiger. Tiger Tiger felt too similar to what I don't actually like about Atari. The DLC is a good convenience, but it's not really that necessary. It's not too big of a convenience. You can't really argue that this makes the original game pay to win. I mean, it's not even co-op or multiplayer, it's just single player. But ultimately, you can do what you want. It's not like you probably don't have money anyways if you're playing Nintendo. Remember when I said there's a spoiler-free section and a spoiler section to this video? The spoiler section is coming up, and I hope to see you guys at the very least at the spoiler-free conclusion. In this game, I started out with Rex, Nia, and Tora as the main party members. Rex was my attacker, Nia was my healer, and Tora was my tank. Then Van Damme came along, and I never really got into him. He's an attacker, and I found Rex was better in the fight against Malos and Akos. That fight was the absolute worst performing fight I've ever had in all of Xenoblade. I spent way too much time in that fight trying to learn how to do the mechanics. Once Morag joined the party, she did replace Tora, and I did use them for most of the series. I did use Zeke throughout the entirety of Chapter 7 because of Mithra and Pyra not being there for that. I did use Tora for brief moments of despair throughout the whole game, because Tora did have more bulk than any other party member. Because of Tora being the near equivalent of Hirapaw and Ricky, I needed to make certain jumps and runs very quickly, and that's why I picked him. Chapter 3 was the worst and best part of the entire game. I had a really hard time understanding the mechanics at this point in the game, and that fight was way too difficult for some reason. At the end of Chapter 3, the fight alone took 15 hours. This is because I didn't really understand much about the game. If this fight didn't happen, the same thing that happened throughout the entire Xenoblade 1 series would have happened in this game as well. Xenoblade 1, I really never fully understood the mechanics. I had a really hard time trying to wrap my brain around it. By the time the final boss fight happened in Xenoblade 1, I just struggled like you wouldn't believe. I believe the first two fights weren't that bad. The third boss fight against the Architect was really difficult. He took maybe like 2 weeks just to beat, and then on top of that it took 2 weeks just to do the grinding required to enter that fight. None of that happened in this game because of the final boss fight that happened in Chapter 3. I really hate the fact I never used Van Damme. He dies very early game and you never really encounter him again. The reason this is bad is because he is a staple of the entire franchise. He is literally a character in every single game. He is massively referenced in every single Xenoblade game. Because of this one moment, I never really got that attached to. I highly recommend just understanding his character better, and the easiest way to do this is just to play with him. That wasn't the only reason though. I believe the main reason why I liked Fiora a lot better of a character than Van Damme is because Fiora did things that the writers of Xenoblade 2 did not make any attempt to do. Fiora had her brother get mortally injured at the beginning of Xenoblade 1. She nursed him back to health, and every moment of the cutscenes with her, it felt very tragic but very kind. It wrecked me to see people in that unimaginable amount of pain. Imagine having to woman up to deal with such a tragedy. It happens all the time to lots of people, unfortunately. Not try to deal with a tragedy, but to show that exact tragedy. The big thing I think they got wrong with Van Damme is his character wasn't doing things actively. He was more of a mentor to Rex by trying to explain to him how to do things that needed to be done. This isn't at all the same effect I felt about Fiora. Not to mention it was too short. Like, I felt like his character just wouldn't have been maybe fleshed out anyways, but what would I know? I never had the chance to really get to know him very well. You could also argue the main reason I didn't like him is because I'm a teacher at a college, part-time. This is stuff I do all the time, and this is stuff that's probably not that interesting to watch, because it's all stuff I do all the time. But his character wasn't necessarily bad, it just was kind of boring in my opinion. I'm not entirely sure how much I can say here, even though this is the spoiler section, but I really liked the Architect's character from this series and how it touches so well with Xenoblade 1. Possibly one of the coolest scenes in the series happened to involve the Architect in this game. His character was really well done and might have been one of the coolest characters in all of Xenoblade, not to mention the insane amount of truth bombs he dropped in a very iconic way. I did really enjoy. Shulk and Fiora were usable as blades in certain parts of the game. I just didn't really care for it since it was the most useless part of this entire game, since it came across as lazy nostalgia bait and it was super blatant about it. Super blatant. Not that it was bad, but it just wasn't good. I didn't really have a desire to use them. It's not worth talking about too much since it's just not that significant. The music was just as good in this game as it was in Xenoblade 1. I wouldn't be using it right now and actually in most of my videos if that wasn't the case. The game's story I am extremely biased of since, as I said, the game was formula based and I did get spoiled on a few things beforehand. This game was good and it became one of my favorite Xenoblade games despite all the contrary because it was so good mechanics wise. I did really like the mechanics. I really wish the tutorial was better since I feel like that's what most people hate about this game, and so do I. You just don't really know the mechanics all that well unless you watch a bunch of YouTube videos. If I didn't have friends playing with me, I may not be enjoying this game right now. I would have had a really hard time and I might actually be on the same page as these other people. The ending to this game is honestly one of the best conclusions so far out of all of Xenoblade. This is coming from one of the people who did know that this was coming beforehand, because unfortunately I did get spoiled on it beforehand. I loved how cool of a sequence it was. You don't need to play all of Xenoblade 1 to enjoy this game. This game functions as a standalone compared to Xenoblade 1, but you do need to play both Xenoblade 1 and 2 to play Xenoblade 3. I hope you enjoy this video. I really did enjoy making this, and I've been dying to make this video for a very long time, and I hope to see you in the next one.